Hello everyone, good morning and welcome to day 4 MuleSoft training. And we are doing this training in collaboration with Guwahati MuleSoft Meetup, Mumbai and Guwahati MuleSoft Meetup. Just I will start with safe harbor statement as always. So both speaker and the host are organizing this meetup in the individual capacity. We are not representing any organization or companies here. This presentation is strictly for learning purpose. We are not holding any responsibility whether same solution will work for your business requirement or not. So you have to do your own evaluation whenever you like going with any product or anything. Just you have to do your own evaluation. The presentation is not meant for any promotional activity. It's just for the learning purpose. The recording of this meetup will be uploaded within 24 hours. You can submit the question at any time. Try to make the session more interactive as possible. Please provide the feedback at the end of the training. Like you can like we are not getting much feedbacks from you. So yeah, whatever we get the feedback, like we just getting 4 or 3 or 5 feedbacks. So I request everyone to just at least provide take a 2-3 minutes just to provide the feedback. The organizer for this
Sorry,
meetup.
Jitendra, sorry to interrupt you. Where are you getting this link for feedback? I was not getting that.
Okay.
So just need that link.
No, no. If you have registered, you might be getting it. Might be in the promotional because in Gmail it gets sorted. Like it get divided. It goes into the promotional tabs or somewhere basically. So you can just
Okay,
check it. Okay.
okay,
So yeah. So organizer for this meetup is myself Jitendra, and we moderator for this meetup Jitendra and Abhishek Batwal. Okay. So what we will cover, we already discussed on these slides. So these are the things we have discussed on the day one, So what is just some basic concept of MuleSoft, and we have just built a RAML. We have published API to Anypoint Exchange. Then day two, we just also just learn more about the RAML, how we can implement the reusability with the RAML Anypoint Studio. We have started with API implementation. In yesterday session, we have seen what are connectors. We have configured a Salesforce connector. We have started implementing the Salesforce system API. We have also seen how we can create a properties and the secure properties, right? How we can deploy the MuleSoft application to the cloud hub. Today, there are a few important concepts that we will going to cover. We will going to understand what is API Manager, API Gateway. We will create proxy. We will implement API Auto Discovery. We will talk about few policies like rate limiting with SLAs, client ID enforcement, basic authentication policy. How we will see how we can secure our APIs, like whenever we are giving the access to API to the client, right? So we will not going to like keep API unauthenticated or unauthorized, right? So we will apply some kind of policies. So if anybody sending the request to the API, it get we can just validate that request whether it's coming from the trusted source, like by using some by providing some kind of credentials to them. Okay, so what is API manager? Anybody like want to talk about what is the API manager? Anybody heard about the API manager?
where we, where we do apply the policies and all.
So the API manager is the place, it's a component provided by the MuleSoft to manage the API life cycle basically, right? So that is what you can do from the API manager. API manager is embedded with the API gateway. So it will ensure that whenever the request is coming, right, it will make sure that request is authenticated, that request is authorized, and then it forward the request to the implementation part. So it is API manager is embedded with the API gateway. So you don't have to do anything like it's a completely a managed service which is completely managed by the MuleSoft. You don't have to worry about the infrastructure. You don't have to worry about anything like about high availability, fault tolerance. It will be automatically taken care by the MuleSoft. So API manager, as I mentioned, it's embedded with the API gateway, a pre-built API gateway. So we can call this as a Mule gateway, right? Which act as a gatekeeper basically, right? Which will ensure that whenever request come, like it will just validate the request, it validate the parameter in the request, it makes sure like all the authentication headers and is available, right? Depending on what kind of policies you applied, right? It will make sure like it get authenticated and then it forward the request to the implementation part. API manager is also provided some kind of analytics basically, so where you can see like how many requests is coming, what is the response time, how many requests are failing. We're going to talk about all those things. Okay, so yeah, so let me go back to my slide. You got that right? So basically it is used to manage your API life cycle, So the API Manager is a tool, is a component provided by MuleSoft to manage, secure, and monitor your API. It also control who can access your API and how they are used basically. As I mentioned, API Gateway is a embedded with your API manager. It's kind of runtime, right? Which ensure that your request is authenticated, it is validated against your ML, right? It will ensure it also control, like, control the request and everything. So that is what the job of a API gateway, which is embedded as a part of API manager. And API gateway is a completely a managed service which is provided by MuleSoft. So what are the key capabilities provided by API manager? You can secure APIs with the authentication and the policy. You can control the access using client ID or the basic authentication. You can also apply the rate limiting policy, and you can also apply the rate limiting policy with the SLAs. You can monitor the API. You can validate the, or you can just monitor the performance of your API. You can manage the API versions and the lifecycle. You can enforce the policy without changing the API code. Even without deploying your API code, you can change the policy at any time. If in future, if you want to move from one policy to another policy, you can easily do that. If you want to apply multiple policies, you can easily do that without writing a single line of code or without redeploying your application or without redeploying your APIs. Okay. So what is the API proxy? So now, like yesterday, what we have done, so yesterday we have deployed one of the API in the runtime manager, right? So let me show you. This is my API. I just changed the name from yesterday. Okay, just put a mule training. So this is the URL generated, right? But this particular API is not like authenticated, right? So I have this URL, and let me copy this URL here. And I have something called, like, this is the API we have implemented yesterday, API/accounts, and I will just send it. I got this response back, right, where I got the multiple accounts, but I haven't passed any authenticated headers or authentication headers, everything, right? This request has been successfully, like, without any authentication, right? We got response back because we haven't applied any security policy or anything, right? So this is what API we have implemented yesterday, right? I want to secure that API, right? And I want to make sure, like, first the API, whenever a request is coming, it get validated by API gateway, and it also check all the authentication headers, like it also validate the authentication headers and everything, like, what we can do that. So there is two approach. So one we can create a API proxy, and one we can create a API auto discovery. I will going to talk about when we have to use the API auto discovery and when we have to use the API proxy. First, let me like implement this, then I will explain, like, what's the difference between API proxy and the API auto discovery, and when to use API proxy and the API auto discovery. We're going to talk about the use cases and everything. So API, as I mentioned, API proxy is like a gatekeeper for your API. It acts as a front layer between your external user and your actual MuleSoft API implementation, right? So whenever the consumer want to unlock the record or unlock the data from the implementation, right, we will have an intermediate, or we will have some middle layer that is known as a API proxy, right? And we will apply all the policies and everything on the API proxy, right? So the consumer will send the request to the API proxy, and API proxy will send the request to the API implementation, right? So that is what we will going to do. In short, API proxy is equals to manage secure entry point for your API, right? So let's start. So we will create the API proxy first. So to create the API proxy, we have to go to the API manager. So we have something called API manager. It's a component available as a part of your Anypoint platform. Okay, here make sure you select the right environment, which is sandbox, because your implementation is also in sandbox. So simply say add, just say add new API. And here we have a two gateway. So Flex gateway is altogether a separate concept. We will go with a Mule gateway, which is an embedded Mule gateway, which is embedded with a API manager. Just say Mule gateway. So we have two options. So connect with the existing API. That is nothing. This is auto discovery. And if you want to deploy a proxy application, I will just say deploy a proxy application. Where you want to deploy, you can just say target type, CloudHub 2.0, hybrid, or self-managed server. I will just say I want to deploy it on the CloudHub 2.0. So we have a CloudHub 1.0 also. So in some cases, if your organization is enabled with CloudHub 1.0, you can see that also. Okay. If you have a runtime fabric manager, you will see the runtime fabric options also. But for now, for my organization, I have three options. So I will go with the CloudHub 2.0. right? And then you for my organization only one region is available, which is US East OYO. In case if you have a multiple, if your organization have multiple region, you will see multiple options here, right? But for my organization only one region is available because it's a trial version. Okay. Then same we have to select the mule version. I will just always take a LTS long time, which is like which is one of the like very tested and tested mule runtime. When we say age is in the pilot mode or something like that, right? So I will go with LTS. Select the Java. Here you have to give an application name. I will just say Salesforce System API. Make sure like you give some unique name. Like otherwise we will face the issue like yesterday. I will just say Proxy. I just put a proxy, right? Salesforce System API. Let me do one thing. I can put a mule training also. Mule training proxy. Just say next. Here you have to search the API. So this is the API which you have published into your Anypoint exchange, right? The RAML you have created. You just have to select that. If right, you can select. If you have a multiple, just select the right one. Here it will automatically publish all your asset type, API version, asset version. Okay, just say next. Now you have to provide here you can provide some kind of instance label. You can put anything name which is easily recognizable system API. Right? Here I will just choose a HTTP endpoint, HTTP only, because for HTTPS we need to configure certificates and everything. Now you go to advanced options, right? And you can just say validate inbound request, enable the console flow if you want. I can just say enable the console flow. If you don't want, disable. I have shown you, right? What is the console flow, where it will just give the description of your APIs basically. I will just keep as it is. Next. Here you have to provide your upstream API implementation URI. So what is my API URI basically? I will take this much of the path. Okay. So this is my implementation URI. So Salesforce System API Mule Training, which and slash API, right? So this is the path I will take. Okay. So this is my path. Just say like this is my upstream API. So from where we get this path? We get this path from the runtime manager. I'll show you. This is my implementation basically. I click here, I get this URL and slash API. If you see when in the router, right? So when we have API kit router, there's a HTTP listener, right? So we have a API also, right? So I will show you. If you see in the implementation part, right? So Salesforce account implement API. Yeah, here you can see slash API. So generally, whatever, so your URL and whatever path given here slash API, I took that as a my implementation URI. As simple as that, right? So let me go back there. Okay, like here we can talk this about this later. Like if you have some like if you want to configure the certificates, right? You can use this particular thing. Okay, and just say save and deploy. That's the configuration you need to do. Yeah, so this is like you got this, right? So I'm just saving and deploy. What will happen? It will going to create a one more application here. See, it started deploying one more application here. So in this case, what is happening here? So now we will going to send the request to this URL. I will copy this URL. Okay, and I will remove this much of the part and I'll paste it. So I'm just sending, this is my proxy URL, right? So what will happen here? Let's take a simple example here. So this is my proxy URL, right? So here I will just open in my notepad. So let me remove this. This is my proxy URL. And what is our implementation URI? So let me go back to my API manager. Okay, this is my implementation URI, right? So let me open this. Okay. So let me go back to notepad. So what it will do, so this particular part, right, will be replaced by implementation URI, right? So this will authenticate and everything it will do and replace this part. So your path will become like this, right? As simple as that, basically. Right. So this is what it will going to do. So let me do Control Z. and I can put this at the top, and this will get converted into slash account. As simple as that, right? So if first the request consumer will going to send the request to this URL, right? The client, this URL will make sure like it get authenticated, request get validated, and once everything is good, it will going to send the request to implementation, and we get the response back, and we send that to the consumer. So that is the flow. Okay, so let me go back. The application is, yeah, now application is deployed. You can see it, and let's see in runtime manager. So here your application is deployed. Let me refresh this. Okay, and here you will see some of the properties, right, for this application. So proxy port 8081, like, and here you can see the implementation URI which you have provided, and like, all those kind of information you can see in the properties basically, right? So this is the application which we have created. This is the proxy application. Let's see if we get the response back. So I kept it simple, HTTPS, and this is my proxy URL, and this is slash accounts. Let's see if we get the response. We got the response properly, right? But still we haven't authenticated it. We will going to authenticate. Just give me a second. First, let me explain, like, you understand the concept of this proxy, right? And I will just slash accounts. So now I got a single account also. So this particular proxy is working. The next step, I will have to I have to apply the authentication policies. So now I've created this proxy. I can just click on policies, and here you can see add policy. First, I will start with a normal basic authentication policy. So here you can use basic LDAP. Or you can use simple. I will go with simple for now because I don't have a LDAP available. Just say next. And you have to provide some kind of password. I will just put admin. Just for testing purpose, I will just say apply. Okay, now let's check. Let's keep the eyes on the logs. So once policy will applied, I am not doing any redeployment. You will see the policy is applied. You will see the message here. Let's wait. It take 30 to 45 seconds for policy to get applied. Once you applied, or once you like apply the policy, right, it take 30 to 45 seconds. Maybe sometime early also. But you will see the message here saying the policy has been applied. And just check in the proxy API, not on the implementation, because we are applying the authentication policies on the proxy API. Let's wait. Any question till I can take? Abhishek, any questions are there?
Yeah, we have two questions. One is from Dheeraj. Can we have two-way SSL on the proxy? Does MuleSoft support that?
No. It doesn't support.
Okay. And then Rahul is asking, what is LDAP?
See, LDAP is like Active Directory basically. So you can connect to the Active Directory, right? Your Active Directory, right? So let's consider you have n number of users. Everything is configured in your Active Directory. So like you have to configure your Active Directory in the basic LDAP. So whatever username and password available in your Active Directory. So through that, the request can get authenticated. Yeah, you can see. Here you can say applied a policy basic authentication. Let's see it. Now what happens. Go back to Postman, just send the request. It gave up 401 unauthorized. Okay. So that's what it's doing. So now what we have to do, we can go to authorization. In Postman, we can use a basic authentication. There should be basic auth. And I can just say admin. Just say send. So this is what we got it. We got the response back. So this time the request has been authenticated. Let's test one more endpoint. Okay, we got this response. So that is what we do with normal basic authentication policy. I will apply another policy. So I will just remove this policy. Let me go with a client ID and the client secret. So there is a client ID enforcement policy. Client ID enforcement policy. Just say next. So here it is expecting where you have to send a client ID and the client secret. You can change it if you want to change it. If you want it as a username and the password, the client ID and client secret, you can just say HTTP basic authentication header. But if you want in headers or if you want as a query parameters, then you have to tell him. So this is the two headers we are expecting, and you have to read it from the this particular headers basically, right? So that is what you are saying. Just apply it. Can you please go on mute? I can see some noise. Okay, so let's see, you will see two messages. Once we remove the basic authentication policy, so you can see this policy is unapplied first, right? The basic auth is unapplied. Now, after few seconds, you will see the client ID enforcement policy has been applied. So let's wait till that. Then I will just till that I will duplicate this. And now we have just applied the policy, but from where we have to get the client ID and the client secret data, right? That value. So you have to go to the exchange. Right, in exchange you have to go to the source system API, and here like your whatever API you published to the exchange, right? That particular API, you can just say request access, right? And from here you can select the instance I want for the sandbox, and just say create new application. So I will just say I can just say simple mule training API sandbox access. You can give some name, so which can be recognized by you later. Just say create. Once you say request access, you get a client ID and a client secret. I will copy this client ID and client secret. This time, like I first remove the authentication, I will just say no auth. But where it is expecting client ID in the headers, so I will just say this is my client ID. Okay. Also, let me copy a client secret. Just enable this. Okay, let's see if policies get applied or not. So I will just check the log. Yeah, the client ID enforcement policy is applied. Okay, let's see. First, we will do the negative test case. I will just remove this client ID and client secret. And what it does, it should send 401 unauthorized. Let me just send the client ID invalid client, because we are not sending the client secret. Let me say client secret. You got the successful response back. Now, what is your question? Your question should be, if in case if I forget this client ID and client secret, where I can find it, right? So that should be the another question. So what we have to do? So in such cases, let me, yeah. In such cases, you can just go to this API manager again, and you can just click on client application, and here you can see whatever client ID and client secret we have created. You can see that here client ID and the client secret basically. Okay, so that is what you can see. Another thing, if you go open this API, you will see this API is in the active state. Okay, which means this API is running. Then also, if you want to check what are the client ID and client secret, or what are the client application is applied or is attached with this particular API instance, right? So you can simply go to the contract. So here you can see this is the application attached to this, and which is in the approve. If you want to revoke it, you can just simply click here. You can revoke this basically, right? Then apart from that, like also we can see some kind of you go to settings, and this is like 1 minute API summary. Here it will generate some kind of graphs basically. You can see it started generating some kind of graphs, so you can see we got some kind of 401 errors, right? It's saying like there are some requests with the 401 errors, those kind of information. So these are the few graphs, right? Total request over time, total policy violation over time, total errors over time, average response time over time, right? So these are the things. These are some normal graphs. You can see there are much more than that, but for now, just keep in mind we have a few graphs, right? If you want to check what kind of response time is API is taking, those kind of things basically, right? So let me go back to presentation. Is let me talk more about. So what we have done, so basically, we have created the proxy API, and we have an implementation. And proxy API just applied the API security and the API policies, and we have an API gateway embedded with the API manager, right? So the first request come to this particular API gateway, then it will make sure it get authenticated against the API policies, and then it will just validate the request and send it to implementation part, right? So that is what we have done. Okay, so I will talk about now. I will talk about the API auto discovery. So here, what is happening? So if you see Here it created one extra application, right? What extra application means? It will take the extra resources, correct? So extra, it will take extra cores and extra resources and all this thing, right? So in case like if you don't want to have a extra resources, if you want to make sure like I just want a single instance of application, but still I can apply the policies and everything. So there is a concept called API auto discovery which we can use, right? With API auto discovery, you don't, it will not create a separate application instance here basically, right? So instead of that, what it will do, it will just embed the API manager, or it will just peer your API manager with the implementation part. How we can do that, I will going to explain you. Before that, do you have any question on API proxy? I will going to talk on that, where to apply the API proxy and where to apply the API auto discovery. I have a use cases and everything for that in upcoming slides, but before that, do you have any questions?
Nothing in the chat at least.
Okay, good. So let's get started with the API auto discovery. First, let me explain the API auto discovery. So API auto discovery is nothing. It's peer your MuleSoft implementation or a MuleSoft application with the API manager. It allows MuleSoft to automatically discover and manage the deployed API from the API manager. Like you can enable the API policies, analytics tracking without deploying a new application to the runtime manager. Right? In short, API discovery, it's a way of API manager to recognize and control your deployed API. Okay. So let's get started. So for that, we have to do something. So first, what I will do, let me go back to implementation part. I will delete this. I don't need it this for now. I will delete this proxy. Delete. I will go to API manager. And first I need to revoke access and everything. Otherwise it will not allow to delete me. Revoke. Right. And let's see if it's allowed to delete now. You can just delete the API from here if you don't need it. It's deleted. So again, we have to come to the API manager for implementing the auto discovery, add new API. Again, same thing, Mule gateway. But this time you just say connect to the existing application, basic endpoint, right? And select the Mule 4. Earlier we have used the deploy a proxy application, but this time I want to connect to the existing application, which is already available, right? So you just say next and select that particular API for which you have to just enable the API auto discovery. Just say Salesforce system API. Okay, and just say next. Here again, I will give an instance label. I can just say Salesforce system API. Okay, I can just say Mule training. Then you have advanced options. I don't want to put anything next. This time I don't have to provide upstream API. I simply say next. Okay, I don't have to provide anything, like just say save. So here important part is this API instance ID. Just copy this API instance ID. Okay, and just go back to your implementation part. So I'll go back to my implementation part and I will go to the config file which we have created yesterday. So simply in this, I will just configure my API ID here. So whatever API ID is generated, right, that you have to copy it and just say API ID. Okay. So I simply saying API ID. So when you configure as a basic endpoint, you have something called API ID. You need that API ID. Okay. So that's a one thing. Then you have to go to you just save this. Then go to the global.xml, go to global element and just say create and just search for auto discovery component. This is my auto discovery component and I want to read the API ID from config file. For that, I will use the syntax called $ curly bracket and name of that property. And here you have to provide a flow. Like, so in this case, my flow will be the main flow, the API kit router flow. This is Salesforce system API main flow. Okay, just say okay. So what is your main flow? If you see, your main flow is this. So I just provided the main flow. So a request will always hit here, then it will route to the correct flow, right? So in auto discovery, what I've done, so I have configured a API ID into my config file. Then I go on to global.xml. I use the API auto discovery component. Here I just put $API ID because this particular API ID will change from environment to the environment. Then I just select the main flow. just say okay. Just save it. Just export this. And I will just, I don't want the source code. This is a certification question also. So if you want to, like, if you want to generate this jar file with a source code, right, you just select attach project source. If you don't want, just add include project dependency, just you can do that. I will just say finish. In both case you can deploy the jar file. Now, two important thing. Now, what we have to do? We have to add two additional properties. When we will publish the API, we need to add the two additional properties. So you go come. So what are those two properties? Let me write those. So I just want to add Anypoint dot platform dot client ID. Okay, let me correct this. Just say okay, this client ID and client secret we need to provide. So this differ from environment to environment. From where you can get that client ID and client secret? So you go to API manager, just click on the environment, and you have to just copy this environment client ID and the client secret. Copy this, right, and paste it here. And now again client secret, and this will again change from environment to environment, right? I will just show this, and I can just say copy this, paste this. So these are the two important properties you need it. So I will just copy these two properties, and I will go back to my implementation. So this is where is my implementation. For that, I need to go to the runtime manager. Okay. So here I will go there. First, I will choose my file, upload file, and this is my mule training. Just now I just published, right? 11:35. Yeah. Just upload this file. At the same time, you go to the properties and just say text view and paste these properties. Okay. So as soon as I will just say apply changes. So what I've done, I just put these two properties, this environment client ID and the client secret here, and and just upload the new file where I've configured the API ID. Any question?
No, so far.
Okay.
There's one question, Jackie, generic also.
Yeah.
So we are creating the proxy. The proxy will access entire endpoints, right? Can we restrict to some endpoints like that? Any feature is there?
Like you can restrict it from like policies. In policies, you can say,
Not,
right. So in
not
restriction,
policies. Not policies. So
now it's
instead of accessing all the endpoints, so only we need to provide to the some external party.
no, that's not possible. Like whatever available in RAML, right? Because you are attaching the RAML. So
Yes.
depending whatever you publish, then in that case you have to create a multiple RAMLs basically, right? So
Okay.
one RAML can have this much endpoints that you can attach to the proxy, right? So that is how you have to control it, because whatever it's in RAML, right? But but you cannot, like if you have a RAML over 10 endpoints, you cannot say proxy to just use these 5 endpoints. That's
Okay.
not like, yeah.
Thank you. Suppose our main API has some security, so either basic authentication or token based.
Correct.
While proxy, in this case, how do we?
No, what you're saying?
In the main API, having some security policy, either maybe basic auth or token based. In the proxy API, is it required to call this token again?
No, I haven't got your question. So can you just repeat?
Main API having some security policy.
Okay.
The proxy API, while calling the main, it will call the through main API, right?
Mm-hmm.
Proxy URL.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, how it will be worked?
See, you can do your main API has some authentication header, right?
Yes, yeah,
Correct. And it's very simple, So what happened? So see, so here you have a policies, right? So in that policies, you can see you have a headers basically, right? So you can just have a header add headers policies and everything, right? Header remover. You can inject some header with if you have a upstream API that have a client ID and client secret. You need to send the client ID and the client secret to that API, right? You can use the header injection policies and all those things, right? So what it will do whenever request come, it will validate, it will do everything. It will inject those client ID and client secret and send it to your upstream API or your main API. That is also you can do it.
Thanks, Jackie. It's really helping.
And also, yeah, there are other things also. This is just an example. In case there might be possibility, the other APIs or like have some kind of bearer token enabled, right? Or say OAuth enabled. Basically, you can write a custom policies also. Like no, you have a provision where you can write a custom policies also. Okay. So let's see what is happening there. The API is deployed, and let me check whether this is API instance. Yeah, see, this become green. It means your API implementation and the API manager instance has been paired. Okay, so let me go back, and if I send the request again, it should give 404. Yeah, 404 not found, which is correct. Okay, because now we have removed the proxy. We don't have a proxy. So what we will do in this case, we will copy the main implementation URI. / API. Just send. We got the response back, right? But still we haven't applied any kind of authentication, anything, right? So in same way, we can apply the authentication. Okay, so basically I can go to my Anypoint platform and I can just say policies. I can just say add policies, right? And like I will use client ID enforcement policies. Next, I will just apply as it is. Okay. And here no contract is associated, right? So for that we have to go back to your exchange. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So it came to exchange. I will just say Salesforce and I can just say request access. And here I will just select this particular instance and I will use the existing application. So I don't want to generate a new client ID. If you want to generate new client ID and client secret, just say create new application. I will just say this and request access. So this will be the same client ID and client secret which we have generated. Now only the difference what will happen here. So if you go to your API implementation part, right? In contract, you will see that contract is linked with this API instance. Right? This has been linked. Okay, good. So now let's see. Let's wait again. Let's monitor this whether it has been applied or not. Okay, the policies has been applied. So now I can test this out. Just say send. That got unauthorized. I will just pass client ID. So I got invalid client because I haven't passed the client secret. Now send the request. Right? I got the response back. Got it? Right? So we have learned like how we can enable the API auto discovery and API proxy. Let me go back to presentation and let me explain you what we have to do. When we have to apply the API proxy and when we have to apply API. So difference, the purpose is same for both. Like, it is act as a gateway layer in the front of real API. So we are not asking consumer to directly send the request to your implementation. You have a proxy. First send the request to the proxy. Proxy will handle all validations and everything. Here in API Auto Discovery, it pair your API instance, your API Manager instance with your application. So request will be definitely there is a gateway which is going to validate and everything, but the request is directly hitting to your application basically. It runs separately from actual API that we have seen. It's a separate instance, right? It is configured inside the Mule application. Use when API is hosted outside MuleSoft. So when we have to use the API proxy. So for example, if you are an API which is written in Java, C# or Node.js, which is running outside your Anypoint platform, and you want to secure those APIs, and you want to make sure you want to manage the life cycle of that API, right? Starting from design, secure, monitor, and everything. Then you can use the API proxy because you cannot You cannot implement the API auto discovery in the API which is other than MuleSoft, right? If you have an API in Java or if you have an API in Node.js, you cannot implement the API auto discovery. For that, you require a proxy. So that is where mostly a proxy is used. Whenever you have a non-MuleSoft API, for that you want to enable the API lifecycle or API management, or any API gateway, right? In that case, you go with a proxy. But if you have a MuleSoft application, and which is like, in MuleSoft application, you have a provision to implement the API auto discovery, right? So you can go with the API auto discovery. You can apply the policies in the both. So here you are applying the policy at a only difference at a proxy level, but here you are applying the proxy directly to the API. Create API manager as a proxy and configure Mule using API ID and the auto discovery element. So we have to use three parameters: API ID, client ID, and client secret. That client ID and the client secret and API ID, those three parameters, different for different environment, right? So you have to make sure you're picking the API ID, environment client ID, and the environment client secret. When to use a API proxy? Use the API proxy when your actual API is not built or hosted in the MuleSoft, but you want to still manage your API through the API manager. Typical use case: a backend API is running outside MuleSoft, maybe a Java, Node.js, .NET. You want to secure and monitor that external API using MuleSoft policies. You need to layer of control like throttling, logging, and authentication in the front of the existing API. Example: you already have a REST API hosted on AWS. You create a MuleSoft proxy to manage access and apply the security policies. When to use the API auto discovery? Use the API auto discovery whenever your API is developed and deployed in the MuleSoft. For example, it is built in the Anypoint Studio, right? And it doesn't matter where you are deploying your API. If you are written the MuleSoft API in the cloud, in the in Anypoint Studio, or like any platform provided by MuleSoft, right? Even you are deploying this API into your own premises. Even your API, you are deploying the API into the EKS or the Kubernetes based architecture. Even you are deploying API to Cloud of 1.0, Cloud of 2.0, you can implement the auto discovery. The API, typical use case: the API is MuleSoft running on the Cloud Hub and Runtime Fabric, or it can be running on the hybrid mode. You can do that. You want API manager to automatically detect and manage it. You are planning to apply the policies. You are planning to secure your APIs. You are planning to enable some kind of logging for your API. You can use this API auto discovery. Example: you build a Mule application, expose the Salesforce system API, which we have done just now, and deployed it to the Cloud Hub. You use the auto discovery to register and secure it in the API manager. Okay. So in short, API proxy manage the external APIs. API auto discovery manage the MuleSoft built APIs. Okay. So that's the main difference. Any question on this?
Nothing in chat.
Okay. I think I provided the enough information when to go with the API auto discovery in the API. Okay. So now we will talk about some kind of policies. So we will just remove this client ID enforcement policy. I will just disable it. Okay. You can disable this. I will use the rate limiting policy. So basically, you may have a requirement from the client, or you may have a requirement of an organization. I don't want to load my API with n number of requests within that some seconds. So you may have a legacy system, and that legacy system can accept 60 or 40 requests in a minute, right? And you want to control those, right? So how you can do that? So there is some policy called rate limiting available. You have a spec control also. So I will just say rate limiting. I will just say next. Right here, it will say how many identifier. I can just say mule. Okay, you don't need this. I will just say you send a 10 request in 1 minute. So I cannot. It can be distributed. Expose header. Just say apply. Right, I will remove this. I don't think it will allow it allowed. Okay, good. So here I already have a rate limiting policies. I applied it. Let keep eye on instance. So once it applied, it will show it here. So the unapplied, you can see it here. It will like, you unapplied the client ID enforcement policies. Okay, let's wait. Let me refresh this. Okay, the rate limiting policy has been applied. So what I mentioned, 10 requests, right? So let me send, I don't want client ID and client secret for this because yeah. Too many requests, right? So I need to wait. And let's see what are the response headers coming, right? So it's saying like X rate limiting is 10, like it reset in this particular milliseconds, right? So the number of requests has been like it accept like 10 requests per minute. So quota has been exceeded. Okay, so let's wait for some time till like till it get reset. So let's wait. Still, it's saying quota has been exceeded. We start getting again. Like, let me send some few requests. So after 1 minute, it will get reset. Too many requests. Okay, now I want to apply two policies. I want client ID also, and I want this policies also. Can we do that? Yes, we can do that because I want to limit. I want to limit the number of requests, but at the same time, I want to authenticate also. So I can just apply client ID enforcement policy again. Just say next. And I don't want to generate. Don't have to go back to the my Anypoint exchange to generate client ID and client secret because this particular contract is already attached with this particular API, right? So I don't want to do anything for now. I will just say let's policy to get applied. So I will see like once the policy is applied, right? So you can just have both policies. So how the policies will run? What is the precedence? So whatever policy is applied at a first, right? So that will take precedence basically. Then the second one, right? If you want to reorder this, you can simply say you go up, right? So I want client ID enforcement take the precedence. Right, then rate limiting. First, I want to authenticate the request. Then I want to see the rate limiting. So whatever on the first, that will take the precedence over the next. Okay, for reordering, you just use the reorder policies. So these are the some certification questions also like this similar kind of questions can come, right? So just keep like how we can reorder and all these things, right? Yeah. Let me check. First, what I will do, I will just send the 10 request. I'm sending the client ID also. Yeah, 1 minute. It's taking more. It's haven't applied yet. Yeah, the quota has been exceeded. Now let's consider now quota has been exceeded. I just send the client ID and client secret now. So here you can see what precedence has been taken. Client ID and the client secret precedence has been taken, right? Now I send. Now authentication, now quota has been exceeded. So you can see the policy which is applied on the first, right? That will take the precedence. Now there's a one more policy. Now there might be requirement. I want few client which can send 10 requests in the 1 minute, and there are few client can send 100 requests in the 1 minute, right? So what you can do? So for that we have something called SLA with rate limiting. Okay. So I will remove this both policies. I will just say search for SLA. So rate limiting SLA based. Okay. Right, expose here, that is fine. Advanced. Right. So you can just say a send client ID and the client secret, just say apply. Now you have to configure SLAs. You go to SLA tires, just say SLA. I will just say bold SLA. And for gold SLA, I just want to do the manual approval. I have to come and approve it. How many requests it can send? 100 requests in 1 minute. So that is the one. Then I have silver. For silver, it's automatic approval. I don't want a manual approval. It can send 10 requests in 1 minute. Just add it. Okay. So these are the two tiers I've added, and I just applied this rate limiting policies basically, right? So here you can, if you edit configuration, let's say advanced, apply the policies, everything, just save it. So here, what's the difference between rate limiting SLA based and the rate limiting? Rate limiting, so it doesn't matter from which client is request coming, right? It will just allow 10 requests per minute. Doesn't matter from which client is coming. Here, it depending on the clients and what kind of tier has been assigned to that particular client, right? Depending on that, it will restrict the number of requests basically for per minute or whatever data you have configured. Okay. So let me go back to my Salesforce. Let me refresh this page. Here I can just say request access, and here I can just say Salesforce instance, and I can say, okay, I will just create a new application. I will just say silver MuleSoft training. Okay, just say create and select the SLA tier. I will select the silver. So it allows 10 requests per minute, request access. I will copy this, go back to Notepad. I will go back to Postman. This will change now. Okay, the client ID and client secret, because I've created a new application. So let's wait, because it takes some time to get the things reflected. And let me go back to my application and let's see if policies has been applied. SLA based. Great. So let me send the request. So too many requests, right? So 10 requests in 1 minute. And also if you go and see here, like in the contract, right? So that silver is automatically approved, right? The silver MuleSoft training is automatically approved basically, because we have kept the auto approval. Now let me go back to my API instance, right? So where it is exchange, I'll just say request access. I'll create this, I will select the instance. I will create a new application, Gold MuleSoft training. Just say create. Here I will select a gold one. Just say request access. Okay, so here you will request to receive and is pending. So here we haven't got a client ID in the client secret. So for that, if you go to the contract again under the API manager, here you have to approve, reject or delete. I will just approve it. So you will get that client ID in the client secret, but I will just copy it from here for now. I will go to client application, go to MuleSoft training. I can copy this client ID. Okay, so and let me copy this. Client secret. Let me send request. I send second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So now it is not giving me a quota exceeded basically, because this is the credentials for gold. If I pass credentials for silver, it will just allow 10. So that's how you can define your SLA tiers also. So depending on the client, you can define how many requests it can send. So yeah, so that is what you can do it. Any question on this?
Nothing in chat. Anyone want to unmute and ask anything?
So like, what are the different, like how many tires we have, like, and like,
You
is there
can
any
define like as many you want, Vikas. Like it's up to you, right?
And is there any limit for like particular tire? Like if
No,
it
I
is a
haven't
silver,
heard about any limits basically, right? So I don't think there is any limit on that basically. I don't know exact limit, but you like till like you will not going to configure more than 10 or 15 tires, right? 10, 5 or 10 tires basically, right? So I don't know the limit, how many limits. I never heard about there any kind of limits are there. I have almost created 10, 15 tires, it's allowed basically because
yeah. Thank you, Jackie.
okay, is this clear, right? So you got a clear understanding of different policies and what is API proxy and what is API auto discovery, right? Okay. Any question on that? Everybody like got this, right? Just say yes because make this session interactive bit, right?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay. So next thing what we will do, see, I will go back to my Salesforce system API. We have to complete the Salesforce system API implementation today. We haven't implemented the contact and everything, right? So we have to do that. The other thing, one of the thing I forget to show you. So this is my application, MuleSoft application. We have some properties. If you want, see, generally we keep these values as a protected. So simply just say protect value. Simply just say protect value. Just apply the changes. That's the one thing. And yesterday, what we have done, if you are aware, right? So yesterday, like we are passing that mule.env and mule.secure key, right, in the application itself. But it can change from like environment to environment. So for that, what I can do, I can copy this mule.secure key and I can create a new property here, mule.secure key, right? And I can paste this value. Okay. Copy this, just say control V and just say protect this value also. And here I can pass mule.env equals to 10 and just say apply changes. Okay, let it get changed, apply changes. Okay. Now next thing, yesterday we have seen we have implemented a few methods. Today we will going to implement one more mode method, which is like I want to get the contact, right, for that particular account. So I want to get account ID and I get the context basically, right? So I want to implement this method. So here I have a Salesforce account implementation. I will create a new file, right click, add new mule configuration file. So let me again do it. Right click, add new mule configuration file. You can just say Salesforce contact IMPL. Okay, implementation. So I will just follow the same naming convention. It is always good practice to keep a same naming convention across the application or like within the organization. Basically, I can just copy this name. It's a get all account, right? But make sure the flow names are unique in the application. So I will just say get all contact or get all account contact. That will be the better name. So I can easily identify this, right? I'll put a logger first, right? And in logger, I will just say retrieving or retrieve the account contacts. Okay, started. I will just say log flow start. I'll put one logger component for end. Okay, it is completed. I can just say log flow end. Now what I will do, I will just bring a query component, the Salesforce query. You can get query or query all, doesn't matter, but make sure your query is correct. And here you can just say Salesforce config. I already have written the query where I just want to bring this particular, select contact where account ID is this. I will show you this query. If you go to the Salesforce, let me see where is my Salesforce is not there. I can just log in into my Salesforce org form. Let me copy my username. Can anybody tell me what is the relationship between account and contact in the Salesforce? So there, one account can have a multiple contact, right? So the account will be the primary key, and account ID will be the foreign key into your contact, basically, right? So one account can, and contact ID will be your primary key in the contact, basically. So one account can have a one account can have a multiple contacts, right? So if you open, like if you want to see what are the different fields available, right? So you go to setup and go to object manager and search for a contact object. Again, I mentioned yesterday, object is nothing, it's kind of table. And if you want to see the fields, you can see all these particular fields. So these are the field name, and this just a label. Make sure like these are the field name, and you can see account ID is the lookup field of the account, which is nothing as it's kind of foreign key, basically. So these are the fields we need to get it. Okay, cool. So now what I will do, I've already written the query. I just want to extract of 5 fields. So here select account ID, first name, last name, email, phone, and title from the contact. Where account ID is this, right? So copy this. And how we can run this query in the Salesforce, basically, like, does Salesforce provided any kind of tool? Yes, we have something called developer console. And under developer console, you have a query editor, and just say, and you select account ID. It's kind of a SQL query only, but here we call as a SOQL, Salesforce Object Query Language. Just execute this. We got 2 accounts, like link with this account ID, basically, right? If you don't want to put a where condition, you want to get all the contact, you'll get all the contacts here, basically. Okay. I will use the same query. Yeah, I drag and drop the Salesforce connector, but only thing, I will make this as a variable account ID, and I want to read the account IDs, right? So where is account ID is coming? If you go to account implementation, sorry, in the system API, the account ID is the URI parameters. So if you see get account / account ID, this is the URI parameter / contact. So how we read the URI parameter? Using attributes.URI parent and the name of that URI parameter. It should match with this account ID. So let's go back to my contact implementation, right? And here I use the set variable. I can put this as an account ID. I can just say attributes dot URI parents dot account ID, right? And you can just say set account ID. Now you have to come to the Salesforce query component, query account contacts. Now in the where condition, you already put the variable as account ID. Now I have to define that from where this variable, from where we have to assign the value to this variable, right? So I just click on FX. You can make this as a bigger also. Just put a curly bracket. Just say account ID. This is the variable name in the Salesforce query, and we have a vars dot account ID where we are reading the account ID. You can always use default. Okay, so just say done. Can anybody tell me what is the next step? What the query account contact will be the output in the Java format. We have to convert into the JSON format. So for that, we use the transform safe, right? And just change this to JSON and just say payload. You can see these are the fields populated automatically. From where it got populated, whatever fields we put in the query, it get populated here automatically. The metadata is automatically generated. So I can just say JSON response. And what will be the next step? We go back to your system API and we have to go to the contact ID and all this thing. Where is the get? Yeah, we have to remove this. I don't needed this. Now I have to refer to the flow. So we use the flow reference. Just drag and drop a flow reference and let me search for that get single account. No, get all account contact. Okay, I'll copy this. I will just say invoke, and I can just say save it. Okay, everything looks good. We can test it here also. Let me test first here before I deploy it. It is always recommended first test on the local. Okay. Any question? Let it get deployed, and till that I will just pick one of the account ID. Let me pick this one. Should I get the response back? Got it. I'll copy this. I get it. So this is nothing API/account, and I'll make this as a local host 8081/contacts. This is the account ID/contacts. So let's see if it get deployed without any issue. Yeah, it got deployed. Let me see if I can get a contact. Okay. Have I implemented on the right place? Let's wait. Okay, I got the problem. I use the HTTPS because local have a HTTP endpoint. Something went wrong. Localhost 8081/API/account. Okay, service might be redeploying. Let me restop. Localhost 8081/API/account/contact. If you want to clear a console, you can use this button. It will keep on clearing your console. Whatever log generated here, it can get. I know what's the problem here. Sometimes in this MacBook this happens, right? No, the 8081 get blocked sometime, but that's fine. We will deploy and test it, but it is not recommended. Like always test it on local, but we will deploy it. Sometimes the port get blocked and we get unavailable here on the local basically. Okay, cool. So go back to your application. There's another way of deploying. Okay, just choose this application and choose the file from here. Okay, so you just choose upload file and use the jar. It's taking some time for deployment. Till it's getting deployed, any question? Anybody have any question?
Yeah, Jitan, as you said, like this is some MacBook issue, or is this like
No, I'm not
tool
saying
issue or
MacBook.
MacBook
It's not
issue?
MacBook issue. No, not on a code issue. Okay. So the port is
Okay.
not reachable. That's a problem. It's not a code issue. If it's a code issue, it will not work on this cloud hub also. I have some problem. Sometime 8088. It's not Mac. I'm not saying MacBook issue. I have some issues. Sometime 8081 get blocked. The 8081 port doesn't work on my laptop basically. Okay. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm aware of that issue. So that's why, like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. I don't know what is the reason behind that. Generally, deployment doesn't take this much of the time. The file get uploaded in the seconds. We can do it from here also. That's fine. Here also it will take time. Sometimes, like, when you're uploading the file, it take bit of time also. Sometimes it is fast. So yeah, now it's fast. It depends on your internet connectivity also. Okay, it started deploying. You can see the status here. So it started deploying this particular thing. As I mentioned, right, we have something called rolling update deployment strategy. Your this instance keep on running till a new instance get deployed. Once new instance get deployed, this particular instance will get removed. But in case of recreate, it is remove immediately and it will create a new instance. So there might be chances of downtime. And you can monitor the logs, what is happening in the deployment basically. So one of the thing I want to show you. So if you see, if you go to the API instance and you can see this is your API instance ID, right? I want to show you something in the logs basically. It's very important, like whenever you get the issue. So sometimes your API doesn't get peer basically, it doesn't get peer, like, so there might be a reason behind that. You haven't configured this API ID correctly with the main flow. Secondly, the client ID and the client secret, which we have passed at the application level in the properties, right? Make sure they are the environment client ID and the client secret, and you are giving the right name basically. Okay, this is what make sure this nothing should change. Even capital letter is not allowed. Make sure this name is as it is, this client ID and the client secret. See, you can see this logs basically. So here you will see, the API, it found the API ID and API ID is unblocked. It means it has able to find it. You will see this in the logs, right? So I just want to make sure, like, in case if it's not getting peered, and if you don't see the status as a green active here, so there is some issues, right? So you can see it here. Yeah, here you can see, like, let it be go there. Here you can see the API is now unblocked and it is available. It means it's able to peer it. So this is the log. And first it will say unavailable. So at some place, first it say API is blocked and unavailable. This is the first message. Once it find it, it will say avail blocked. See, first it say block unavailable, and after few seconds it will say API key it's now unblocked and it is available. Okay. So these are the two important messages you just look for in case if you are getting any issues. Okay. So let me go back. Yeah, now it is deployed. Let's see if we are able to get the contacts. I will just use this only. API slash. See, we got the contact, right? So this is not as I mentioned, I have some 8081 port issues, right? So that's why we are not able to get it. So let me get more accounts, right? So I will just say get account. I take some another ID. Let's consider I take this slash contact. You get the two contacts for that. So whatever contact is available, you get that. The account ID is this, email and all these things are this basically. You get that. Okay. So now what about policy? So once you deploy the application, policies and everything, whatever is applied to another endpoint, that will also get applied to this also. Okay. If I don't pass a client ID and client secret, and let's say it will throw some error. Yeah, it's an invalid client ID and the client secret. Okay. So yeah, we have one more method. So I think we have a post also. Now, if I want to implement post, basically, right? So we have something called post method also. So here we have implement the get account ID, get account ID contact, and we have implemented the post accounts, and we want to implement this account/account ID/contact, basically, right? So what I can do, I can just go here and I can use a flow. Okay. In flow, I will just always start with logger. Create account contact started. So I will just say log flow. Just drag and drop this one. You can just say create account contact completed. Okay. Log flow stopped or end. And next thing, I will just drag and drop a create Salesforce connector. Create Salesforce operation. Okay. So here we have already a Salesforce connection string, and now you can just search for a contact object. You just put it here. It will automatically publish the metadata, right? Just make sure contact object. Basically, you can just say contact. Just refresh this. And also, I want to set a variable. Set variable that is nothing as an account ID. So from where will we read the account ID? From URI parameters, attributes dot URI params dot. What we want? Anyone? This is account ID. The name should match with the URI params, basically. Okay. So here I will just say done. Just say set account. Okay. And next thing, I will drag and drop a transform message in the front of this. Here you can see all the contact metadata has been generated automatically. So whatever fields available in the Salesforce contact object, you can see it everything here. Right now, I want to define the metadata, input metadata, right? What we will send from the postman. So let me go back to my RAML first. Like I can go to Design Center, and I can copy System API. I will just click System API. Example, I already defined my contact payload. I will just say copy. Okay, and let me say notepad. Just save file. Plain text. Control V, Control S, and then I can just say contact.json. Now I can define, it's not mandatory to define the metadata. If you are aware of the field, you can directly map it, but it's good practice to define it. I can just say contact JSON, just say create type. Here you can select this as a JSON. I have an example. I don't have a schema. Just select the example. I can go back to my desktop. Untitled contact.json. So it generated. I will just say select. See, Either you can just drag and drop this like this, like account ID with account ID. Right? So here it generate a map payload. So whenever like you want to iterate, right, we use the map operator. I will going to talk about that, but for now just keep as it is. I will going to talk about those things. I will just say first name. I will just say last name. I can just we will talk about those part. Okay. So Abhishek will take some session on data with me, and Abhishek will be going to take, right. We're going to talk on that data with map operator. So whenever you want to iterate through the array, we use the map operator. Keep that in the mind, right? So you see these two payloads are array, and I want to send a multiple contact, right? So what it will do, it will iterate each and every object within the array, right? And it will just form a payload basically. Like I can just say phone. Is there any email? I can just say email. Okay, so I will map that many fields. Let me check if there's any mandatory field. If I'm missing, if it's missing, we will say it. Okay. So now I will just say rename uh, contact JSON request. Okay. Here I configure everything. Create account contact. But as I mentioned, right? So we will not get the account ID right in the JSON message. I don't want to pass through the JSON message, but I already store in this variable, right? So I want to read it from the variable this account ID by this error. This is okay. So I can just change this to vars dot account ID. Okay. So in transform message, instead of reading from the variable, I just change it to the vars dot account ID. I can read it from the URI parameters, which I stored in the variable. I will just say save all. Sometimes it shows error. It doesn't mean it's always an error. Okay. Just remove this. Just remove this. Just drag and drop flow reference. Let me go back there. Here I have to just make sure I give the proper naming conventions. Create account. Okay. So let me copy this name. I just save this. Okay. I forget to do one thing. Let me do that also. It is building it. Give a second to this. Okay. I want one more transformation message because the whatever output come, right, that will be the Java format. I just want to convert it to the JSON because connectors mostly return the output in the streaming way or like Java format. I just convert into payload, right? I can just say rename. Okay, I get drag and drop. I just copy this flow reference, right? I will just say invoke. Okay, no error. Just save this and simply say right click, export, next, finish, finish. Okay, so now we will deploy this. And we will form our postman request. I'll simply duplicate this and I will just body. I will copy the same. I just change few things here and there. I will just change this to the post. I will just say raw. I'll just say JSON. I'll just make this as a beautify. So I can remove like QAK. I can remove account ID. I don't need it. This I can just say Rose1, Gonzalez1, Rose12. Phone number I will change bit 767. Title is okay. Type I will remove it. I don't need the type. I don't need account ID. Rose12. I don't want this ID. I don't want this type. Don't want this ID. Okay. So let me do one thing, like phone is there, title is there, last name, first name and email. Phone, title, last name, first name and email. So these are, so now I'm sending a two record, right? You can send the multiple also, right? So I'm sending these two records basically. Okay. I'll just say okay. Let's see if it's got deployed. It's getting deployed. So here what I'm doing. So this is the same URL. I will not put it on localhost. Host here. Body raw JSON. Let's see what are the fields we map. If we can add some extra fields, that will be also good. Like, yeah, it's okay. That's enough. Okay, more than enough. If you want to add mobile phone, also you can do that. Yeah. Can you please go on mute, please? Just adding numbers. It's got deployed. Let me check. Yeah, it's deployed. Let test if it works or not. Body, that's sent. Yeah, we got the successful response 201 created. So two contact has been created. So this is one with this ID. Let me copy this ID. Okay, and let me go to my Salesforce. So what you can do, you can remove all everything, right? Just keep a domain and remove everything. Paste this ID. Enter. So you can see like this particular record has been linked to the ACE communication. So whatever ID we provided, right, that is the ACE communication. And like you can see the phone number, like details and everything, like phone number, like you can see mobile phone number, everything whatever we have provided, you can see it here, right? Let me take a second one, second ID. These are the two contacts created. In one request, you can send up to 200 contacts basically. I will remove everything. Just paste this, enter. Something is went wrong. Yeah. Okay, so this is the second contact. You can see the details for second contact, phone number and name, like SIN 112, FOBS 112, like it links with the ACE communication, right? So whatever account ID we pass it. So depending on that, it will going to link. Like if you want other details, you can simply map it, right? For example, if you want department or you want title or those kind of information, you can just map that. So simple, like what you can do, I will like simple, like this is my title here. I haven't mapped the title. So you can just map the title here. Okay, it generated title. Just say save all. And now next time, whenever you will send, it will show the title also. So you can just, whatever fields you want, just map that, those fields basically, right, towards the Salesforce. Any question? Is this clear? Like So we have completed with this system API, and now we will in next session we will start building. We will go through some data and we will start building some kind of process API. So here we are trying to build a end-to-end API-led connectivity architecture, right? And in next like we'll do some kind of batch processing, how we can process the large number of records. We will talk about the for each loop. We will talk about the parallel for each loops. So there are other components we're going to talk in the next session, right? So I will just stop here for today. I think we have covered a lot of things basically, right? So I will going to stop for here today. Any question?
Jitendra, I need some clarity difference between horizontal scaling and replica size. What is that?
It's not part of this training, Hari. Sorry. We can talk on LinkedIn if you need details. I can provide this. I have written a lot of blogs and a lot of things there, right? So I
Okay.
can provide. But here it's mostly like I don't want to bring those topics into this training. We have a architecture training coming up, Hari, right? So
Okay.
there we will talk about all these concepts. But if you need the information on this particular horizontal scale, see horizontal scaling, I can explain you where you can instance the number of replicas, right? So if you are when we do the horizontal scaling, basically when we do that, if the number of requests is increasing, right, in that case you go with the horizontal scaling. You increase the number of instance, you increase the number of replica, you increase the number of workers. In case if you are getting the number of requests, right, and but it is not, the memory is not able to accept too many requests and it is failing because of some heap size or some memories issue, right, then you go with a vertical scaling where you increase the vcores. Basically, instead of increasing the replica, you increase the replica size or the vcores or the worker size, basically, right? So where it can process the large amount of payloads and everything, right? So that is where you do the vertical scaling, or no, Hari?
Okay. Okay.
If you want more, you can just put me question on LinkedIn also. I will provide the more details on that, Hari. Okay. So I
Okay.
don't want to. Yeah, you can just provide that. So you got the enough information. What
Yes, yes.
Hari?
It's a basic
Horizontal.
information.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Any other question?
Nothing on chat. If anyone want to unmute and ask anything, I've already shared the required resources in the chat. You can get the recording link and the resource get link over the
Okay.
chat.
And guys, I will share this complete project which we have built, a Salesforce system API, right? I will just share over the GitHub because we have completed one system API which is end to end. Let's see, next week we will start with data view and we will put some kind of error mechanism into that system API, and then we will start with a process API. So I want to make sure you people understand what is the API led connectivity architecture end to end. What things goes in the system API, what things goes in the process API, what things goes in the experience API. I want to show some kind of reusability also. Okay. So let's talk something more in the next session. I hope you like the video. Like the session, and thanks for joining. Right. I hope everybody will be joining on the next on day 5. Right. So thank you so much. Thanks, Abhishek. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah,